January 1922, a 24-year-old woman named Amelia Maggia, who went by Molly, visited her dentist complaining about a toothache. At first, her dentist found nothing seriously wrong. He recommended that she have a tooth pulled, which was a perfectly routine procedure. But when Molly came back just a few weeks later, her condition had worsened dramatically. The dentist then pulled the adjacent tooth, but neither wound would heal. Instead, they both grew larger as blood and pus seeped into Molly's mouth. Pulling more teeth didn't help the matter, and the dentist soon noticed a worrisome abscess on Molly's jaw. This, too, needed to be removed, but when the dentist operated, pulling away the skin of the gums to look at the bone, something seemed disturbingly wrong. The bone was a sickly shade of gray, and when the dentist prodded it with his finger, he found to his horror that the entire bone crumpled like ash. With that, the dentist had no choice but to scrape the rest of Molly's disintegrated left jawbone out with his finger. But her grisly ordeal was far from over. That summer, the rest of Molly's jaw was removed alongside pieces of her inner ear. And then, just a few months before her 25th birthday, Molly Maggia died. She developed tumors that cut into her jugular vein and flooded her throat with blood, causing the young woman to choke to death in her bed. So what caused this 24-year-old's nightmarish condition? The answer lay in Molly's job. Before she got sick, she spent her days painting watches with glow-in-the-dark radium for the United States Radium Corporation in Orange, New Jersey, exactly like many other young women. And Molly was just the first of the so-called Radium girls to suffer an excruciating death. After her, several more women died horribly, including one who suffered from a complete collapse of her vertebrae. It disintegrated just like Molly's jaw. The torturous symptoms that the Radium girls suffered all had to do with the substance that the young women handled every day, a substance which, unbeknownst to them, was incredibly dangerous and deadly. Though men were given lead aprons to protect themselves, the girls were encouraged to lick the paintbrushes they used to better apply the substance to watch faces. They were assured that doing so wouldn't be dangerous, and, indeed, some of them came to enjoy the pretty, sparkling bits of radium that got onto their clothing and hair. But though the Radium girls kept getting sick, it would take time and concerted effort for anyone to acknowledge what they had suffered. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey.
Today, we're discussing the horrific story of the Radium girls. This is a horrific story, but Radium Girls does like a cool name for like a band.
Yeah. Well, you know, there have been several bands that then named themselves after unfortunate situations. Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, that's true.
You know, bands like that, like Judas Priest, infamously named, right?
Right.
So Radium Girls, I could see it. I could see a punk band or like a new wave kind of all female,
right?
Alanis Morissette type deal.
Yeah, I could see that definitely. Yeah. Radium. Before we get into Radium Girls, I think we should talk about what radium is.
You're right. Yes.
What it is and why it causes horrible things to happen.
Define radium, and then we'll define girls, and then we can talk.
Yes. So radium was first identified in 1898 by Marie Curie and her husband Pierre. It wasn't isolated by them until 1902. At this time, they knew that this was a dangerous element. They suffered from exhaustion and poor health while working with it, which is an effect of radium exposure. And they sometimes got burns and stuff on their hands.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't Marie Curie, she ended up contracting like cancer or something, right? I think we have a post on the website of like ironic deaths or something like that. Some of the most ironic deaths in history. And I believe
she was one of them.
Was it?
I think her husband was hit by a carriage, but not her.
Yes, she died in 1934, age 66, of aplastic anemia, likely from exposure to radiation.
Yeah, it's a dangerous element, but at the time it seemed promising as a cancer treatment.
Interesting.
It was called radium from the Latin radius or ray because it would emit a faint blue light. And because of this kind of glow it could have, it was used as a commercial product, or it became used as a commercial product.
Of course it was.
It was actually thought that it would be like healthy for humans in small doses, and because it like contained energy.
Yeah.
People thought it could brighten your smile and your skin, even though it didn't
Well,
really do this at all.
You're glowing.
You're
right?
glowing,
You're glowing.
and then you're dead. But first you're glowing. But people did think it could have these other uses commercially, and so it was used in things like chocolate, which they said can make people younger.
Wow.
Toothpastes and cosmetics, water, which promised to cure arthritis.
Radium water. Wow.
Night lights, which glowed in the dark. For our purposes, clocks and watch faces, which could also glow at night. Some of these, I mean, some of this sounds really crazy, like radium and chocolate or whatever, but some of them weren't really that harmful because they use such a small amount of radium, and it was more like the marketing than the actual product.
Yeah, well, it's like how you can buy Goldschlager and it has bits of actual gold in it, right? It's like a marketing thing. It's
a marketing strategy,
it's quote unquote a naturally occurring element. So you're like, it's natural. How could it be bad for you?
Right. Well, and this seemed like it was like the future. They found this like future element.
It is something, a very like sci-fi post Frankenstein sort of deal, like this glowing brick.
Yeah, right.
You'd think like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, they've unlocked something incredible. That said, some of these products were harmful. They're like the water, for example. There was this one. He's basically like a socialite, a former golf champion named Eben Bryers, who
I just saw a picture of him as I was looking up radium water.
He promoted this radium water, and he said he drank 3 bottles of it a day. He ended up dying at the age of 51, and the Wall Street Journal said, which is pretty spicy after someone who just died, but he said the radium water worked fine until his jaw came off. Yeah,
the picture of him I saw is a picture of him just missing the entire bottom jaw of his face.
Yikes. That's horrible.
Not safe for work. Don't look it up if you're in an office right now or something. Trigger warning. It's gross.
It sounds gross.
It's a very gross image.
I have to say the intro to this podcast was also pretty gross because I talk about how her jaw disintegrates.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
But in any case, radium, people didn't really know it was dangerous at first, and it really seemed like this kind of miracle thing. And it opened up these new career opportunities in the 1910s, the 1920s. Young women started working at the United States Radium Corporation, where their job was to paint clocks, instrument gauges, and wristwatches with this glowing radium paint.
Yeah, interesting. The first sort of quote unquote glow in the dark watch in a way.
Yeah, and this was really important at the time during like World War I to have if your watch could glow at night, that could give you an advantage on the battlefield. So girls who started working at the Radium Corporation, like they could make a lot more money than doing other work, and it was considered like patriotic and important. Plus, it was like pretty easy. They were just kind of painting watches and making money. So like,
if not for the danger in hindsight, it almost sounds relaxing to a degree.
Right? Yeah. Yes. The thing was, this element was, dangerous, and they were encouraged to lick their paintbrushes to get it to like a very fine point so they could get all the nooks and crannies of the watch.
Yikes.
Some of them did ask if it was dangerous. They were assured it was very safe. That said, men at the corporation who worked with much larger amounts of radium did wear lead aprons. So there was like...
So they knew there was at least some.
They knew there was something.
I was going to say, so yeah, if Marie Curie and her husband were the ones who sort of identified this, it seems very quickly realized some of the dangerous effects. Mm-hmm. So was this just purely like higher up marketing kind of people who were like, no, it's safe, don't worry?
I don't know. But they said it was safe, and the girls believed them, and 2 disastrous defects. The radium girls were known as ghost girls because this dust from the radium was like settle on their hair and their skin.
And they would glow?
They would glow.
Wow.
And they loved it. They leaned into it. They would wear their best dresses to work so that on the weekends it wasn't like they were like glowing. It would kind of give like a...
like a Twilight vampire almost, sparkling in the sun.
That's actually a good way of, They painted their nails with radium. They rubbed it into their hair. They applied it to their teeth to give their kisses a pop. So they were really like, they're like, this is great. This makes us more beautiful and more, I don't know, definitely shinier.
Sure. To give their kisses a pop. That is really bitter. That is ironically very funny.
At its peak, there were 300 girls working at the United States Radium Corporation. Again, easy, well-paid work. You get this cool glow from it. But they started developing pretty horrible health problems. As we covered in the intro, the first one to get sick was a girl named Molly Maggia, who died shortly before her 25th birthday after suffering this like horrible deterioration. The image from the intro that I'll just repeat again because it's so awful is like she was having these teeth problems, and the dentist reached in to touch her jawbone and it just disintegrated under his touch. He said like ash.
Yeah, that's another not great picture to look up.
Yeah, not good. Not good. But even though she had died in this really horrible way and, she'd worked so closely with radium, these two things weren't really like linked. Doctors claim that she died of syphilis, which kind of has saying this. I'm not really sure why the doctor said this, but it removes radium from the equation and also kind of paints her in a certain way, being like she was like a loose woman or something.
She deserved it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But other girls were also getting sick. They would lose their teeth and their hair. Some got skin cancer or throat cancer, which of course if you're licking the paintbrushes, it makes sense.
Right.
One girl suffered from a total collapse of her vertebrae, which sounds like a pretty horrible way to go.
Yikes.
And many had this radium jaw like Maggie, so a deterioration of their jaw bones. All bad. Bad all around.
Yeah, I can't imagine a fate worse than just your bones disintegrating.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't get much worse than that.
No, it's pretty bad. But it took a long time for anyone to really care about this.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if we want to talk about workplace culture in the 1920s America, a lot of bad stuff was going on that people weren't necessarily caring about. So,
right. Actually, it's kind of surprising to me because I feel like at the turn of the century, there had been a push for more workplace safety and stuff, kind of like with the muckrakers, journalism.
Right.
But anyway, I guess it didn't really affect.
Yeah. Well, I think it was more like, hey, no blatantly abusing your employees.
Or no child labor.
Or no child labor thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe not necessarily and let's make sure everything we're working with is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so in the end, the Radium girls kind of had to stand up for themselves, and 5 of them sued the U.S. Radium Corporation in 1927, but things were made complicated by a 2-year statute of limitations, even though there had been an independent study a few years earlier that said that radioactive paint was, in fact, harmful when ingested. So, there was proof that they had been harmed in the line of work. In 1928, several of the girls accepted an out-of-court settlement, but it was only a briefly held victory because all 5 who sued would be dead within a couple of years.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, and when I was researching this, the man who invented radium paint also died in 1928 of radium poisoning.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure if that's really karmic because he wasn't the one who asked them to paint watches, but it just is interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, he opened Pandora's box in a way there.
In a way, yeah. It was also proven that Maggia had not died of syphilis, but of radium poisoning.
Sure, yeah. The way they marketed their paint was they called it undark.
Oh, that doesn't seem like a very good line to me.
Undark paint. Undark. There's an old ad. The power of radium. Here, I'll read the quick little blurb from this one. What year is this from? 1921 advertisement for undark paint. The power of radium at your disposal. 23 years ago, radium was unknown. Today, thanks to constant laboratory work, the power of this most unusual of elements is at your disposal. Through the medium of undark, radium serves you safely and surely. Does undark really contain radium? Most assuredly. It is radium combined in exactly the proper manner with zinc sulfide, which gives undark its ability to shine continuously in the dark. Manufacturers have been quick to recognize the value of undark. They apply it to the dials of watches and clocks, to electric push buttons, to the buckles of bedroom slippers, to house numbers, flashlights, compasses, gasoline gauges, odometers, and many other articles which you frequently wish to see in the dark. The next time you fumble for a lighting switch, bark your shins on furniture, wonder vainly what time it is because of the dark, remember undark. It shines in the dark. Dealers can supply you with undarked articles. For interesting little folder telling of the production of radium and the uses of undark address, and then they have their address down at the bottom.
It's interesting to hear the uses and also the idea that this didn't even exist 23 years ago and now it's here.
Yeah.
But Undark sounds like a phrase that like Orwell or like Vonnegut would come up with to me.
Yes.
It's like so uncreative and undark, but I guess whatever. Worked for them.
It is very Vonnegut feeling.
Yeah. The undark. Yeah, it is interesting. I think it speaks to this era where it felt like, oh, we're going to like, all these things are going to, science is going to change the world. It's similar to our era in some ways with
I was going to say, talking about like the radium water and things like that, it feels like there are a lot of modern parallels of just like people pushing supplements of certain not credible nature. There was that guy who kind of blew up the Liver King. I don't know if you remember the Liver King.
No.
He was this like super, just ridiculously buff. I think he's a Canadian dude. Big beard, just ridiculous toned muscles, clearly doing steroids. Like the most on steroids man you've ever seen. But he denied ever doing steroids and said that the reason he looked that way is because he lived, he had a very specific term, but basically like saying that he lived off of like a caveman diet of raw meat and pretty much nothing else. And he would make like a bunch of TikToks of him eating just like raw meat dinners, and he would never eat like vegetables or anything. And then of course it came out that he was totally a fraud, that allegedly, I don't know if, allegedly he was a fraud. But it feels very similar where it's like, it's promoting this like, hey, if you want to be super strong and look like me, all you have to do is eat raw meat. And it's like, that's so dangerous.
Right.
That's so dangerous.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Radium water feels very much the same. It's like, no, radium water is great. I feel like I'm glowing on the inside. It's like, and then you lose your jaw. Right.
Then you lose your jaw. Right. Yeah. I wonder what the Radium Core would have done with like TikTok influencers and things. I'm sure they would have been all in that. But
it's something that feels very of its time. And yet you can point out 100 different things that might be similar nowadays.
Right. It makes me kind of think of all the new like weight loss drugs people use.
Right, like Ozempic. When you said radium jaw, I thought Ozempic face. It's
not like this. I mean, I think people that have had some bad symptoms from that, but not like, it's not like, I mean, I don't know anything about it. But
it's a shot that is supposed to suppress your appetite, I think is what Ozempic actually is for.
Yeah, but something like that idea, I guess, of like this thing is just gonna fix everything. I think it feels similar in some ways to how radium was used, as not in like the watch style so much, but as like something to like consume and it'll cure you of all these things.
Yeah. No, it definitely felt like they were touting it as like a miracle, not a miracle drug, but a miracle substance.
Yeah, but in any case, it was not only the girls in New Jersey who sued. Also, there were also radium girls in Illinois, in Ottawa, Illinois. And like the girls in New Jersey, they also ran into roadblocks. They were told the radium paint they used was safe because it was different from the paint used in New Jersey. And they said it contained no mesothorium, but just radium, so it was safe. Obviously, that's not true. One woman testified from her sickbed, and the radium girls in Ottawa won their case. I mean, many girls never sued, and some never got sick. And the last radium girl actually died in 2015 at the age of 104. So, like, I guess it was sort of a luck of the draw thing in some ways. But yeah, in the end, this case is significant just in like kind of the history of like workplace practices in the U.S. because it was the first case in which a company was held responsible for the health and safety of its employees and helped lead to the creation of the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Whew.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, that it has a lot of like lead paint is another one of those things. There was like lead paint used to be super common, and then people are like, maybe we don't want that in our houses. I mean, still, just things are constantly changing and evolving. Now, like all these. I don't know why this has become a political talking point, and I won't get into the political side of it, but people are coming to realize that maybe gas stoves could be linked to certain problems. Though I haven't looked into the research on that. I just know it's been a topic of discussion. But yeah, certain things that you just are told are safe or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there is a long history of like there are products that I mean, even like cigarettes. I think.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Maybe like, this doctor recommends like these kind of cigarettes or whatever.
Right. Or even recently, we can, to remove the political element of this, they're going to put warning labels on alcohol now, right? Because it's been linked to certain forms of cancer.
Yeah.
Which people act like that was like a mind-blowing study. And I was like, I'm pretty sure we'd known this, but similar sort of deal. Like, I don't know how big it was a thing in America, but in like traditional medicines in like Europe, especially where alcohol culture is like a very big thing, it would be like, oh, if you're sick, have a hot toddy because the whiskey will dilate your blood and it'll help circulate more, right? So people would use alcohol as a treatment for things. And it was like, no, it's actually probably just bad for you, but it is kind of nice.
It makes me, I feel like in like 50 years or 100 years, we're going to think about like social media the way we thought about like cigarettes is I'm going to have like an anti-internet, like, I don't know.
You're in the mood.
Rampage today. I brought this up during History Happy Hour too, but yeah, I just think it's going to be considered like this like evil for society, or at least mental health, and probably have a warning
there's already
label
studies. Already studies suggesting.
Well, in Australia, like I think banned it or tried to ban it for
children under
kids.
16.
Yeah. But it's things like that, things that feel like important and like good, and everyone in society is using, and then kind of maybe comes out later that it's not good or very
I remember there
dangerous
were, even like a decade ago, there were a lot of reports that like, oh, you shouldn't keep a cell phone in your pocket all the time if you're a man because it could lead to testicular cancer. I don't know if that link was ever officially made or not. But I remember that being a focal point of concern. So anytime something new comes along, that you're going to have people who are singing its praises and saying this is the next best thing. This is the next step in human evolution. If we want to talk about like AI, right? And then you're also going to have
examples.
you're going to have counterpoints to that where it's like, what if this is actually bad for us?
Right. Yeah, that's true. I'm just thinking now of like even like in the Victorian era as well. There's like they use like green paint on objects and like green coloring for like their dresses, and it contained arsenic, like
right.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting to look back at like things like that and to look forward at like AI or the internet or whatever,
or even Red 40 or no, not Red 40, Red Dye 3 just got banned as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's like everything is bad for you,
right?
So. Choose your battles, I guess. But
I brought this up to my girlfriend earlier. I've been seeing a lot of discussion online, and I don't know why. It's like across social media platforms, random people discussing the merits of plastic cutting boards versus wooden ones.
Oh.
And I don't know why this has become this giant discussion, or maybe I'm just seeing it and confirmation bias.
Because one's like dangerous?
Well, yeah. Well, if you use a plastic cutting board, you get a lot more microplastics in your food, but you can sanitize it easier because you can put it in the dishwasher.
Right.
Versus a wooden cutting board, you can't put in the dishwasher, but wood is naturally antimicrobial, but maybe you shouldn't use the same cutting board for meat as you do for vegetables, even if you wash it right after. And I was like, I've never thought this much about cutting boards in my life. Should I be? I don't know.
Maybe so. That's interesting with the microplastics. I never thought about that.
That's another.
But that makes a lot of sense.
Discussion.
Yeah.
But plastic. I mean, I think that's a good example. Though that's relatively recent. Plastic's not like super old as an invention.
I don't think so. No.
Another one of those things where it was like this big shift to plastic, and oh my god, plastic's so great because you can make it take any shape. It's like, yeah, but it also doesn't go away.
Right.
So
not so good.
Yeah, maybe not so great.
Well, you heard it here first. Everything is bad for you, and you're doomed. Yeah.
I think it just it's good to be aware of things. If we're to have a lesson from all of this, it's good to be aware of things. I think there's approach everything with a healthy level of skepticism, but don't fall down conspiracy rabbit holes of unsubstantiated information.
Yes.
Trust the science. Don't trust the marketing is my thing with this, I think.
Yeah, I'm reading a book about the 1950s right now. It just makes me think about like the nuclear bomb, because at some point it stopped becoming about science and more about like politics. Anyway, to wrap this up.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about this, go to allisinteresting.com. We have a bunch of stuff about the Radium girls, about Marie Curie, about other as I mentioned earlier, kind of ironic deaths throughout history of sort of a similar nature. A bunch of different stuff over there dealing with a lot of the stuff we talked about today.
Yes, and more.
Labor issues, all sorts of things. So yeah, be sure to check that out. Follow us on, as we sit here and say social media is poison, go ahead and follow us on social media.
Right.
If you want your social media to be a little bit less bad every day, go ahead and follow us a little bit less bad on Instagram, History Uncovered Podcast, on YouTube, or you might, already be listening to this. Be sure to give the podcast a positive rating and a nice review. We're going to try and start the new year off with positive vibes.
Yeah.
Going in.
If you are a member, you'll get an extra segment of this show, which is the History Happy Hour, which we recorded earlier with our colleague Amber. And if you want to become a member, you can by going to allthat'sinteresting.com/membership. Or if you want to start with something else, you can join our newsletter by going to allthat'sinteresting.com/signup. Yeah, and hear about new things from there. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I think the next one might be the gulags. But yeah. TBD. But more interesting stuff coming as always, and we'll be back soon with that.
Yeah. Stay away from the radium.